In the deepest wound of the earth, far below storm, sound, and sunlight, something ancient begins to move. For ages, the Mariana Trench has kept its silence, holding a secret older than memory and larger than any legend ever spoken. Sailors whispered about it. Scientists dismissed it. Machines sank toward it and returned with static, precious scars, and impossible shadows. They called it the Abyssal Guardian, not because they understood it, but because nothing else seemed worthy of the name. It does not hunt like a beast. It does not sleep like an animal. It waits. It watches. And now, as humanity reaches deeper than it ever has before, the ocean is answering. In the dark where time feels frozen, the biggest unknown creature in the ocean is waking, and its first movement may change everything we believe about life, the sea, and ourselves as the abyss reveals what it long kept hidden. Far beneath the restless skin of the Pacific, beyond sunlight, storm, and every familiar sound, the Mariana Trench drops into a darkness the world still cannot claim to know. It is not simply deep. It is a place where the planet seems to fold inward, where mountains disappear into black water and pressure gathers with the weight of continents. At the surface, the ocean glitters and moves like something alive. Down there, it becomes memory. It becomes silence. It becomes a warning. Old sailors spoke of a presence beneath the Pacific, something so vast that ships seemed to slow when it passed below. They described nights when the water went still, whales abandoned their roots, compasses trembled, and holes groaned. Some heard a vibration rising from below, not a roar and not a song, but a low pulse that moved through bone before it reached the ear. Scientists dismissed the tales as fear, yet the details remained too similar to ignore. A shadow larger than any whale. Whatever lived there did not rise to hunt. It waited. The first proof arrived as sound. A research vessel above the Challenger Deep recorded a signal that did not fit any known source. It was not volcanic. It was not tectonic. It was not the call of any creature in the database. The waveform crossed the boundaries between geology and biology, as if stone and flesh had spoken together. It lasted 17 seconds, then disappeared into static. Hidden inside the noise was a rhythm, slow and deliberate, like breath from something too large to imagine. The mission that followed was announced as a study of extreme life and geological instability. In truth, it was an attempt to find the source. The team built a submersible called Orpheus, designed to survive where steel becomes fragile and the human body would be crushed in an instant. Its instruments could hear tremors in rock, red heat in the water, and map forms beyond sight. But no machine can truly be ready for the unknown. It can only carry humans toward it. The descent began before dawn. Pale blue water filled the viewports, then faded into black. At 1,000 meters, sunlight vanished. At 4,000, the sea became a cold field of shadow. At 7,000, the trench walls appeared on sonar-like cliffs in a cathedral without stars. At 10,000, the hull began to sing under pressure, a thin metallic note that reminded every person inside how little stood between them and the weight of the world. Then the systems failed. For 12 seconds, every screen flashed white. The compass spun. The depth gauge froze. Sonar returned no wall, no floor, no creature, not even empty water. It showed nothing, as if Orpheus had slipped into a place where measurement itself had lost permission to exist. When the external microphones opened, a sound filled the cabin. It was deeper than thunder, slower than any engine, and so vast it felt less heard than endured. The crew were not listening to it. They felt certain it was listening to them. Outside, particles began to spiral in the floodlights. Mineral dust, tiny organisms, and flakes of pale sediment moved as though gathered by invisible breath. The submersible drifted downward, pulled by a current no model had predicted. Ahead, the darkness shifted. A ridge appeared beyond the lights, broad and curved, rising from the trench floor. Sonar identified it as a wall. Then the wall opened an eye. For several seconds, no one inside Orpheus accepted what they were seeing. The eye filled the viewport like a moon buried under the sea. Its center was black, ringed with a faint silver glow that pulsed in calm waves. It did not blink with fear. It did not narrow with hunger. It simply looked at them, and in that gaze the crew felt the full poverty of human language. The thing before them was not a fish, not a whale, not a monster in any ordinary sense. The wall was skin. The Abyssal Guardian had been lying along the trench floor, its body mistaken for terrain. Ridges of ancient flesh carried mineral growth, coral-like structures, and colonies of blind creatures that had built their lives upon it. The visible portion stretched beyond the floodlights, beyond sonar range, beyond belief. Scars crossed its surface like valleys. Under its skin, slow lights moved in patterns that resembled constellations seen through clouded glass. It was not simply large. It made size feel like a childish measurement. The Guardian moved. One careful shift sent a pressure wave across the trench and pushed Orpheus backward as if it were a loose shell in a tide. Sediment rose in pale clouds. The cliffs groaned. Inside the submersible, alarm screamed, but the crew recognized something more frightening than power. The movement had been controlled. The Guardian could have destroyed them without effort. Instead, it had made room. Then its body began to glow. Thousands of points lit across the ancient skin, not randomly, but in sequence. Blue-white pulses moved along ridges. Violet rings opened and faded. Gold waves traveled toward the trench wall and returned changed, as if carrying messages through water, flesh, and stone. The microphones translated the light into layered vibration, and the cabin filled with sound that seemed to reach behind the mind. No words came. No voice spoke. Yet images struck the crew with terrible clarity. A young ocean beneath a red sky. Black vents breathing into newborn water. First life flickering in mineral warmth. Ice spreading across the world. Fire falling from space. Continents crawling apart. Wooden ships passing overhead like insects. Engines. Nets. Explosions. Plastic drifting down like pale snow. Noise invading the deep in waves that never stopped. The Guardian was not speaking. It was remembering. Then the trench floor split open. A red line burned through the darkness near the eastern wall. Thermal readings surged. Rock fractured. Superheated water exploded upward, carrying minerals, gas, and enough force to tear Orpheus apart. The pilot tried to ascend, but the current had become chaos. The submersible spun toward the eruption, lights flashing across boiling black water. Discovery did not make them important. It made them vulnerable. The Guardian raised one limb. No one could name its shape. It was not a fin, not a tentacle, not a wing, though it carried echoes of all three. It rose from the sediment with monumental grace, broad enough to cover a city street, edged with glowing tendrils that moved like threads of lightning. The limb passed between Orpheus and the eruption. The force that should have crushed the vessel broke across the Guardian instead. The creature protected them. The lights across its body flared, then dimmed. Its great eye tightened. A sound rolled through the trench, vast and sorrowful, and every living thing nearby vanished into cracks and shadow. Orpheus was lifted by the wake and carried away from the vent field, not by accident, but by design. The Guardian had absorbed the violence of the abyss and spared the fragile machine that had dared to enter its world. In that moment, Dr. Voss understood the name. The Abyssal Guardian did not guard treasure. It did not guard a hidden kingdom. It guarded balance. It endured ruptures, redirected currents, sheltered life, and perhaps stabilized systems science had never known existed. It was not the monster beneath the world. It was one of the reasons the world above had been allowed to continue, careless and loud, beneath an open sky. At dusk, Orpheus rose. Its hull was scarred. Its windows were clouded with stress fractures. Half its systems were dead. But the crew were alive. When the hatch opened, they did not cheer. They looked at the sky in silence, as if the blue above them had become impossibly thin. The horizon no longer seemed like the edge of the known world. It seemed like a fragile line drawn over a depth that had been watching humanity all along. The evidence should have changed everything. Instead, the world argued. Governments questioned the data. Experts demanded review. Critics called the footage a pressure hallucination, a sensor distortion, a story too large to be trusted. But every denial had to explain the same impossible image. An eye beneath the trench. A body larger than terrain. A pattern of signals that continued after Orpheus returned. Because the Guardian did not sleep again. The abyss is not empty. It remembers every ship, every net, every drill, every poison poured into its dark. It hears the hunger of nations and the arrogance of machines. It feels the heat of a changing world sinking slowly through the water. And somewhere in the deepest wound of the earth, older than myth and larger than fear, the Abyssal Guardian is awake. Not hunting. Not hiding. Waiting. And now that it has seen us, the question is no longer whether we can find the biggest unknown creature in the ocean. The question is what it will decide about us.